Hey Comets, so it is Doc here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Algebra 2. Now, in talking with some of your teachers, I learned that this week you're going to be focusing on functions, and shout out to Fatima, who gave me a copy of her packet that I just took pictures of, so I kind of know where you're going. Believe it or not, functions is one of my favorite things to do in math. The reason why I love it so much is it's so simple. If you already know Algebra 1, so if you could easily solve something like 2x plus 7 equals 14, then, which by the way would be 3.5, because you would subtract 7 from both sides, divide both sides by 2. So if you know those basic one-step and two-step equations, doing functions is going to be super simple. There is a set of function rules, and you're going to be responsible for knowing what those rules are. Now, sometimes when we do functions, we're going to be given a specific value. Those are even the easiest ones because first we just substitute. It's all substitute, solve, substitute, solve, substitute, solve. It's literally that simple. So let's take a look here. If I have, let me get my pen tool because I have my pen tool now. Let's see here. So, for example, if I have this is my notation that I have on my screen already, function notation. Now, you should already have learned function notation back in the day. And when I say back in the day, we didn't use it in geometry, but you definitely used it in algebra. So you learned that if I had f of x equals, you knew that really that was just the same way as saying y equals. That's it. That's all this is saying is y equals. And you learned that if you were given the function, let's say f of x equals, why am I having issues? Apparently yellow really wanted to be used. X plus 4, back in the day you learned you had to come up with a table. You would put the x here. Here you might write f of x, x plus 4. And then here you'd put down, let's say, -2. 0, 1, 2, even though I skipped numbers, and then you would substitute -2 plus 4. That's going to give you +2. 0 plus 4 is going to give you 4, 5, 6. You learned that already. All this is a fancy thing is substituting. That's all it is. It's just straight substitution. So if we look here, that's the same idea that you have with regular functions. With regular functions, it's the same premise. It's just substitution, but it's substitution with a little bit of a twist. So if we come down here where it says addition, here it says f plus g of x. All that's fancy for saying is two functions. F is your first function, g is your second function. That's all it's saying. So if by some reason you get a question that says, what's f plus g of x? Well, all you do is first you figure out what f of x is, and then you add it to g of x. That's it, combined like terms. Subtraction, let's say we're saying what's f minus g of x? Figure out what f of x is, subtract, 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 g of x. It's literally taking it that simple. Here's a plus sign. Here's a plus sign. Here's a subtraction sign. Here's a subtraction sign. It literally is that simple to do. I don't know why that's, hold on one second. My phone is going loony toony and I don't want it to just keep distracting us. So anyway, sorry about that. Here, multiplication, multiplication. Here's division, here's division. Literally, that is all it is. It's that simple. If it says addition, you add the functions. If it says subtraction, you subtract the functions. If it says multiplication, you multiply. If it says division, you divide. That's literally what the operations with functions are. So let's take a look at one of these examples I've got. Scrolling. Here we go. Here's the first example that I totally borrowed from a website. It says, well, here's our first function that we're given, f of x. Here's our next function that we're given, g of x. And it wants to do, what do you do if you add them together? And if you have your -3, that's what they want you to substitute. Now, don't make this super hard for yourself. whenever they actually give you a constant or any term, remember a term is just like if I have x plus 4, x is a term, 4 is a term. So if they give you a value for x, just substitute it in. So they told you evaluate f and g at -3. All that means is you're just going to substitute it in. That's it. So here's f of x. All they did is instead of writing x, they just wrote in -3. So now you do -3 squared. Here they wrote in -3, and that's it. Then they solved it. Now, all that's different is they keep writing this. This is one idea. You don't ever go back and forth. If there's one place that kids screw up when they get functions, they think like, oh my gosh, how do I get rid of the f? You don't get rid of the f. It just stays there the whole way down. F of x stays there the whole way down. F of -3 stays there the whole way down. You never have to go back and forth between sides. That's one of the ways kids get screwed up. You don't really do that with functions. It's just like, okay, if I have x is -3, what could my y possibly be? Going back to what we did in Algebra 1. So then they just kept solving. -3 times -3 is +9. The opposite of -3 is +3. The -2 just kind of goes down. Again, this whole idea just keeps moving down, just keeps moving down. 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 minus 2 is 10. So now we have a value. We know that if we evaluate f of -3, we're going to end up getting 10. So same thing with g. Plug -3 into the g equation. Solve it. Then, because the initial question asked you to add those two together, those functions together, all we do is we add those two numbers. Here is what it says. Add these two numbers up after you figure out what each of them is at -3. 10 plus -2, 8. Let's look at another question. It's literally going simply one step at a time, one step at a time. Okay, so let's look at another example. Here it tells us h of x is this value. K of x is this value. Now we don't know the exact number. We won't know the exact number unless we're told what x is. But we're told what x is. It tells us it wants to evaluate it at 5. 5 is what x is. Then it tells us to multiply our answers together. So first we're going to plug 5 in. Plug is a simple way of saying substitute. Plug 5 in. Find out which h of 5 is. Plug 5 in. Find out what k of 5 is. And then you multiply the numbers together. It's literally that simple. We're not even, dude, some of you are stressing out, and some of you are kids who I taught last year, and I'm like, why are you stressing over this? You plug things in and you solve algebra. That's it. So h of 5, remember, this is what idea. This idea stays the same all the way down. We don't go back and forth. It's just gray circle. It does not matter what's underneath the gray circle. That gray circle stays the same. You don't draw a line. You don't go back and forth between sides. It's just gray circle, and then you do all of your work. So we plugged 5 in for 2x minus 4. So 2 times 5 is 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. So now, anytime we see gray circle, we know that gray circle is going to equal 6. Then we scroll down again. Then it tells us, okay, what would it be when you plug it into k? Well, when we plug 5 into k, we just simplify and solve. -3 times 5 is -15. Add 1, you get -14. It said multiply these values together. When we multiply, what's 6 times -14? -84. It's literally that simple, step by step by step. Let's take a look at a couple examples. Here, it says, what's g of h of 1? Look at, this is where it's super easy because they tell you what the x value is. So all I'm going to do is every time I see an n here, I'm just going to plug in 1. So n squared, that's really saying 1 squared. 4, 2n, that's really saying 2 times 1. Well, what's 1 squared? 1 times 1 is 1. Plus 4, what's 2 times 1? 2. What happens when I add all those up? I get 7. So now I know that g of 1 has to equal 7. Now I do the same thing, but this time I figure it out for h. So I'm going to hit my I don't know why there's pink. Now I'm just going to plug 1 in for n for h of n. So I've got, well, h of 1. What does that equal? Well, let me substitute in negative 3 times 1 plus 2, because all I did was make this times 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Now it says multiply those two numbers together. 7 times negative 1 equals negative 7. And that's it. Your problem is completely done. No drawing the river, going back and forth between sides. You substitute, you solve. That's it. All right, let's look at the next one. Again, substitute, solve, substitute, solve, substitute, solve. That's all we're doing over and over. Substitute, solve. So we come here. I don't know why blue is so resistant. Thank you very much. Put on our pen tool. Okay, we're going to substitute 4 in. So here I'm going to write 4 times 4 minus 3. That's it. All I did is I made this a 4 and I made this a 4. And I know 4 times x, 4x, it's multiply, 4 times 4. That's going to give me 16 minus 3. Here I plug the 4 in again. 4 cubed plus 2 times 4. That'll give me 64 plus 8, which will give me 72. And this will give me 13. 4 times 4 is 16. Yep, 16 times 4 is 64. 8, 64, and 8, 62. Yep, I was down in my math for a second. All right, then we know we have 13, but it says subtract 72. Well, when we do that on a calculator, we get negative 59. Again, simple, not challenging at all. Substitute, solve, substitute, solve. Let's look at another one. Here, same exact idea. We would just put 10 in. 3 times 10 is 30. 30 plus 3 gives me 33. Plug 10 in here. Negative 4 times 10 is negative 40. Negative 40 plus 1 is negative 39, which I wrote 2. Then it says add those numbers up. Negative 6, done. When I come over here, all I did is I plugged 3 in. 3 times 3 plus 2. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. Then I plug the next piece in. All right, well, what happens if I put here? Well, 2 times 3 minus 4. Well, what's 2 times 3 is 6. 6 minus 4 is 2. And then this says, just divide them. Okay, divide them. 11 divided by 2. Then, now I can just double check. That's all we're doing, is we're just going down, scanning. Yep, there's our negative 6. There's our 11 over 2. That's how you do it when you don't have a variable and you just have a number, so you can do the evaluation. Sometimes you're going to end up, you won't be able to do that. Sometimes they're going to give you a letter. And let's take a look at a couple examples like that. So let's look at number 9, for example. Number 9 says, okay, first of all, we're doing g minus f of x. All we're going to do is, this is the same thing as saying, okay, take g of x and then subtract f of x. That's all this is saying. So we're just going to write down, well, what's g of x? Okay, g of x is negative x squared minus 1 minus 2x. And then I need to subtract. And here's the only little trick I'd give you when you do subtraction. When we subtract f of x, just make sure you put that whole f of x function in parentheses. And the reason why that's important is when we subtract, we're going to have to subtract each piece. We're going to have to distribute that negative, so that's when it becomes important. So now I can just say, okay, well, if I rewrite it from scratch, I've got negative x squared minus 1 minus 2x. This becomes negative x. This becomes negative 5. And I do that because this is really like a negative 1. So then I combine like terms. Well, is there any other x squareds? Nope. So I'm going to write negative x squared. Okay, my next term would be the x's. So I've got subtract 2x minus 1x. So that gives me negative 3x. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. And that's your answer. That's simple. Let's take a look here. F of x, f divided by g of x. All that's saying is take whatever f of x is and then divide it by g of x. dude, I literally could just draw a line right here and circle it. That's the answer. Now, one little catch is that they may make you do some kind of factoring. So sometimes you would have to do some kind of factoring to get your solution. But see, that's exactly the same answer. We didn't do anything differently, and that's the answer that we got there. So sometimes you would have to do a little math so you could factor it out and cancel, but that doesn't happen all the time. I'm not even going to show you these because it's that simple. Just put it in, solve. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get to something like 13, because with 13, we're multiplying. So we're going to have to take this entire thought here, which is 2x cubed minus 5x squared. And we're going to multiply that completely by 2x minus 1. And so like I said, this is where it gets more important that you know your how to multiply binomials. 2x cubed, 2 times 2 is 4. X cubed here and 1x here, all I do is add the exponents. Done. Then I have to make sure this goes over here. 2x cubed. Then I do the inside. Now here's one trick that I like to do. I like to, it's not the Erig hack, but I like to just line up on my exponents. So I know if this is an exponent of 2 and this is an exponent of 1, it's going to be an exponent of 3. So negative 5 times 2 is negative 10, and I know I have my x cubed. And then I go like this. Negative times a negative is positive. Negative 5 times 1, that's just going to be the 5x squared. And then, so my solution would be 4x to the 4th minus, combine these terms, 12x cubed plus 5x squared. So that's when it becomes a little bit more challenging. So let's just double check that one, because it has been a long time since I've done functions. Let's see, 4x to the 4th minus 12x cubed plus 5x squared. Awesome. All right, so that's what you need to know for function operations. Now, the next thing, which I'm not sure if you learned yet, based on Fatima's packet, I'm almost thinking you did not learn, but in case you have, is composite functions. All we're doing is we're substituting a function inside of a function. So just like on the last page where we're doing like subtract 3 and we put negative 3 in, or 5 in, or 1 in this case, we're putting the entire function inside. Now, here's how they suggest you doing it, and for the most case, I've done it the same way. This is f of g of x, which means that here's our f, and what's our of? G of x. So instead of being like f of 5, we're saying it's f of g of x. So we're taking the entire g of x idea and plugging it in for x. What I tell my students to do is I tell them, think of a picture that is easy to draw that you like. And I often do a heart or a star. So how this says f o g, this means f of g of x. So it means take g of x and plug it into the f. So this is what I do. I'm so dorky, but it works. See how the inside here, this one right here is g? That means that's the one that gets to go inside. So all I do is I put a heart around g. And then I'm like, okay, well, that means that I have to make every one of my x's a heart. So this says f of heart equals negative 4 times heart plus 9. And if you don't get this, that's totally fine. Some people will get it, some people won't. Then I'm like, okay, well, what does heart equal? Well, heart equals 2x minus 7. So instead of just putting x or a number, I'm going to write f of 2x minus 7 equals negative 4 times 2x minus 7 plus 9. Because all I did is I took this pink heart here, put it in this here, I matched this one with this one. That's all I did. So then I solved negative 4 times positive 2 is negative 8x. Negative 4 times negative 8 is positive 28. Then I've got my plus 9, which this is a typo because this should have been a 9 here. They did it correctly here. That should have just been a 9. And then you combine like terms. And then you're done. Literally that simple. You just substitute. That's it. I don't know how else to say it. It's literally substitution. It's algebra with a little bit of extra love from substitution. Because that's all you're doing. Substitute, 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 substitute. Okay? Now, sometimes you need to perform the operation first before you can keep going. So let's take a look what that would mean. Here, it's super cut and dry. G of f of x. So that means I'm going to take f, and f is going to go inside g. So first, I have to figure out what f is. Well, how do I figure it out? I use that letter. So here, this is the same thing as saying 2x minus 2. And that is going to go in every time I see the x. And again, some kids get confused, so this is when I draw something silly. Here, this means this is a black dot. So everywhere I see x, I'm going to put in the gray dot. I'm going to put that information in. So here, I'm going to put in 2x minus 2 cubed plus 5 times 2x minus 2. That's it. Now, you might have to substitute this, and I'm not going to show you how to do that, but I mean, you might have to solve this and combine like terms, but that's in essence what the process is. So if you look here, g of h of a. So this is what's going inside. The h goes inside, the h goes inside. Well, it already tells us to use a, so all I'm going to do is every time I see an a, I'm putting in this entire thing. So I see an a to begin with, so I'm putting in h of a, all of h of a. Then I keep going. Here's the squared, here's the squared, here's plus 1. And then I solve. 3a times 3a is 9a squared plus 24a plus 16 plus 1. And then I simplify. And I just did that in my head, but so then it gets a little bit harder when you don't have letters. Sometimes you just have to do the straight substitution and get some numbers. So let's take a look at what that would be. Here it says, okay, first figure out what g of t is. And then once you figure that out, do this again. So all I'm doing is, here it says g of t equals 2t plus 5. First, I have to see what g of 5 equals. I'm sorry, g of 2 equals. So I'm going to plug that in. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 5 equals 9. So on a coordinate plane, if this is my x, this is my y, I would have 2 for my x and 9 for my y. So on a coordinate plane, it'd be like up here. That's all it's saying. So then it says, now that you know this number, take this number and now put it again back inside. So I'm just going to say, okay, 2 times 9 plus 5. 18 plus 5 gives me 23. Done. Next one. Here, it says do it of 2. First, we do g. We start with the inside, then we move to the outside. So I'm going to plug 2 in. 2 times 2 plus 4. 4 plus 4. What's 4 plus 4? 8. Now that I have this 8 gets plugged into f. The opposite of 8, minus 4, negative 12. Done. Okay, so I'm going to pretty much stop here because there's not much else I can tell you about functions. It's literally that easy. If you feel like this is hard, great. Watch the video over and over again till you get it, or shoot me a message on Instagram and I will do my best to help you. But it's up to you. You either decide, listen, I may like or not like my teacher, but I have a brain and I'm going to use it and I'm going to work hard and see what happens. Or you can be like, I don't like Algebra 2, I'm not going to do anything. Don't be like that. You got to be your best every day. You can do this. Watch the video multiple times. Stop by me and see me in A126. You got this. All right, guys, I will see you later. Ciao.